Good morning. We've done a lot of sitting over the last few days, yeah? And we've covered all the ground of existence. We've reached the four corners of the earth. Our practice here today has touched everything. Nothing's been left untouched. And so now, as we're turning the corner and we're looking at the end of retreat, in a way, we'll never leave here. We'll never leave this place. But in another sense, we will re-engage and we'll move back to the rhythm of our daily lives. So what have we seen here? And how are we going to maintain that? Is this awakening like some kind of garment you wear? There's a case in the Mumonkan. It's a 20-second case. It's called Kashyapa's Knock Down the Flagpole. It says, Ananda asked Kashyapa, the world-honored one gave you the golden robe. Did he give you anything else? Ananda! Cried Kashyapa. Yes, sir? Answered Ananda. Knock down the flagpole at the gate. So Ananda here is the nephew of Shakyamuni Buddha, and he was about 30 years younger than the historical Buddha. He entered or started on the path when he was roughly 12 years old. And he had what we've come to know today as an exceptional memory, a photographic memory. And he was the Buddha's attendant from roughly his early 20s until the Buddha passed on into nirvana. So he constantly followed the Buddha everywhere he went and kept in his mind every word, every gesture, every act, and every sermon as he was following along the way. And when the Buddha passed away, tradition has it that he did expository work. So the sutras that were passed down were actually based on the memory of Ananda. He recited all of the talks, reproducing them with perfect accuracy, but also with perfect mannerisms, such that some people thought he was actually some reincarnation of the Buddha at the time. And they thought that the people who were present, who had been there to hear the Buddha speak, thought that the Buddha had reappeared. And so Ananda was obviously very moved by what he heard, but perhaps not to the core. So these past memories may have been present with him, but they never actually seeped in. They stayed in some sort of crystallized state. They never actually penetrated him. So Ananda, he didn't actually wake up during the Buddha's lifetime, even though he heard every sermon the Buddha gave and could repeat them, not just by word, but the emotional state and the gestures and actions. But this present case talks about how Ananda actually woke up. And he woke up under Mahakashyapa. Some of you will remember that was the first transmitted heir of the Buddha. His name was Kashyapa, but upon receiving Dharma transmission, he was given the title Maha, which is great. And many of you remember the case in which it happened, right? What happened in that case? The Buddha holds up a flower, yeah. Buddha holds up a flower. And that was enough, he said, for him to recognize, penetrate deeply into the true nature of existence and to actually wake up. So when the Buddha gave Mahakashyapa Dharma transmission, he also gave him his robe and his bowl as a token of this great transmission. The robe wasn't really gold, but it was accorded great value because of what it symbolized. We have some more people wearing some very heavy robes on their shoulders this weekend, and you know what that robe symbolizes. So he asked the question, and Ananda is the only response that comes from Kashyapa. And then, yes, sir. Small gap in between him, calling and responding, and that vast chasm that's opened up between those two is where we're asked to look. In that place, there's pure and perfect awareness, not sullied by any conceptual idea, not sullied by any grasping or clinging, an openness, a playfulness, a curiosity that's present before we choke it or strain it with what we think it's supposed to be. It's like a perfect mirror reflecting the light of the entire universe. Everything that is right there in that small gap. Although we think of it as silence, that bell peals to the four corners of the earth. There's nowhere it doesn't reach. And at this, just that simple call and response, Ananda saw where all the teachings were pointing. And he suddenly wakes up. We often want to think of enlightenment as something neat and tidy, something we can achieve. Then we can don some ceremonial vestment that'll tell everybody that we've done it. And we're somehow complete. No more arguments now. I wish it worked that way, didn't it? I can put on my golden robes and go into the kitchen and tell Vanessa, I expect this and this and this. I don't think things will go over too well if I try that, In a way, we wear these because we want to remain in a state of wonder and the charm of not knowing. In that gap between the call and response, between the curiosity and then the conceptual grasping, in that small little window is all of awakening. Awakening requires us to face something. It requires us to face the resistance that we're going to have when we move beyond our karmic momentum. When we move beyond how we see the world, how we want the world to be. There are moments when this happens where there's going to be some fear that comes up. Because in some ways, we don't want to let go of the story. The frank truth is that not many of you like the story anyway, but it's the devil that you know, right? What's beyond it? I don't know. Well, I don't want to walk into not knowing. Because in that place, we're fully actualized, right? We come about and the circumstances as life present themselves manifest us. We're lived by our life. But that's in our act of mastery, not of abandon. It's essential to really open up to and honor the trepidation, the fear we have when we face that gap. When we're able to open up to the unfiltered, raw, present moment, and just be manifest by what conditions demand in terms of how we're going to affect compassion. It's not an act of quietude. It's not an act of stillness. Well, I shouldn't say that. Perhaps some of the circumstances may demand that. But really, it's characterized by, a vibrant and joyful outpouring of our gratitude, our attention, and it really shows itself naturally as compassion. If you blank out in the face of that, recognize that's not it. Right? That's us kind of shying away. That's a protection mechanism that we have to stop us from engaging. You have to move beyond that. That's not what we're cultivating here on the cushion. We didn't come here to clear our mind. We came here to loosen our grasp on our conditioned consciousness, and to see the story for what it is, to look at it bravely, yet to even laugh a little bit in the face of it. Recognize that there's joy even in some pain. But really, to see that we are the medicine. We're much greater than the sum of all of our fears. To do this, we can't have anything that we reference from an ideological perspective. We can't have any part of us that's reserved. This is a full abandonment of the notion of something that's just too dear for us to let go of. Because we need our hands open, and we need to act freely if we're going to embrace this moment fully. We find ourselves, though, when we lose ourselves in this way. That's how we actually, when we show up in that space of curiosity and openness and wonder and service, then we really see how the universe works us. And this is what Ananda finally bore witness to in that short space. Kashyapa approves it. Mahakashyapa approves it. How does he approve it? He says, knock down the flagpole at the gate. It's an interesting play on words, but back in medieval Japan, I'm sorry, not medieval Japan, this is way before that, back in the hills of India, when someone was going to give a lecture or a talk, metal was very dear. Who would think to form it into a bell and hang it from a tree to hit it? That was something that just was beyond the means of most people. So instead, they'd erect a tall pole and run a strip of fabric up it, and everybody would say, there's going to be a talk. Now he's saying, you can knock that flagpole down. There's nothing else left to be said. Everything that I could possibly tell you and more is contained in that silent gap between what's being posited and your conceptual apprehension of it. If you just walk into that gap, you'll see it. But there's an implication here also, that while we're knocking down that flagpole, we're also letting go of what it is or who it is we think we are, and what we're expecting out of life. That doesn't mean that life becomes less vibrant, or that we even lack cause or purpose. We do need to cultivate an intention of how we want to show up. That's why we chant these 4 great vows. Every time we have a ceremony, generally we'll open meditation periods. We certainly close out our day with it. Creations are numberless, I vow to free them. Illusions are inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to open them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. So that intention is always with us. But aside from that, we just work with the boundless resources of the present. There's nothing else required. There's nothing else that needs to be said. When we do this, knocking down the flagpole, we're knocking down our ego as well. We're letting go of some concept or ideal of enlightenment, or even some ideal of practice. That's the true koan, the koan of your existence. How are you going to knock down the flagpole? How are you going to knock down that flagpole? how are you going to show up for your life?